Faith Lewis had her gloves on when the shooting started. Not in an alley, not in the street, inside her own clinic. The same hands that once saved a Korean mafia boss from 15 years of silence were now shaking, not from fear, but from a decision she never thought she'd have to make. Because Lee Min-ho wasn't just her patient anymore. He was the reason men were dying in her waiting room. There are no safe healers in a world ruled by leverage. Every life Faith saved pulled her deeper into a war she didn't choose, and every life she lost reminded her who would pay the price if she walked away. The cartel didn't come to kill Lee Min-ho. They came to prove something worse, that if you want to break a king, you take the woman who fixed him. And Faith understood, standing in blood and broken glass, that this story was never about love. It was about what she was willing to become to keep him standing. Before the story continues, let me say this. If any of these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, subscribe and comment and heart emoji, because stories like this survive only when someone chooses to stay instead of silently walking away. Now, let's continue. Dawn broke over Morrison Street like a promise no one intended to keep. Faith Lewis stood at the clinic's second-floor window, coffee cooling in her hands, watching orange light bleed across the Chicago skyline. 6:15 a.m., the city's brief moment of peace before chaos remembered its job. She'd been awake for 36 hours straight, a teenager with a gunshot wound at midnight, a mother miscarrying at 3 a.m., Mr. Chen's COPD flare-up at 5. This was her victory. The expanded Morrison Street Clinic, 40 beds of hope in a neighborhood that had learned to expect none. Her name, Faith Lewis, RN, on a brass plaque by the door that Lee had commissioned without asking. 3 weeks since she'd looked at his body and broken every rule she had. 3 weeks since the Korean mafia boss with trauma carved into his spine had trusted her with his brokenness. 3 weeks since she'd crossed the line from healer to accomplice and discovered she couldn't find her way back. Didn't want to. The coffee tasted like yesterday's decisions. Faith turned from the window, her body carrying the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. At 42 years old, her reflection in the glass showed a black woman whose curves had always been called problematic by people who didn't deserve her time. 260 pounds of competence that society tried to make invisible. But Lee saw her, every inch, called her beautiful in Korean words she was learning to understand. Behind her, the clinic hummed with early morning energy, nurse practitioners shuffling through charts, the smell of antiseptic and hope. This place was hers, funded by money she didn't ask about, protected by men who killed for a living. Room 7 held Maria Gonzalez, 38 weeks pregnant with her 4th child. Labor had started 2 hours ago, slow and steady. Faith had checked her cervix at 5:30, 4 centimeters dilated. Baby's heartbeat strong. First baby was always fastest, but Maria's body knew this dance. Room 12, Tommy Williams, 8 years old, asthma attack that had scared his grandmother into driving through red lights at dawn. Faith had administered albuterol, watched his oxygen saturation climb from 89% to 96%. He'd lived to blow out birthday candles. This was her world. Controlled chaos, problems with solutions, bodies that made sense. Then the morning shattered. The first explosion came from the parking lot, a vehicle detonating in a fireball that shook the building's foundation. Faith's coffee mug hit the floor, ceramic fragments scattering like shrapnel. The second blast followed immediately, the clinic's front entrance, security door blown inward. Fire alarms screamed, patients screamed louder. Faith's training kicked in before fear could. She was moving, muscle memory from 15 years in Level 1 trauma centers taking over. Everyone away from windows, staff initiate lockdown protocol. But there was no protocol for this. Men poured through the smoking entrance, 4, 5, 6 of them, Hispanic, heavily armed, faces covered. The cartel. Even without Lee's briefings, Faith would have known. You learned to read violence when you patched its consequences. "Get down!" she shouted at her staff. Nia, her youngest nurse, froze in the hallway. 24 years old, fresh out of school, still believed nursing was about saving everyone. The lead gunman raised his weapon. Faith saw the trajectory before he fired, saw where the bullet would go, saw Nia's chest cavity exploding, saw a mother somewhere learning her daughter died at work. Faith threw herself forward, 260 pounds of determined mass hitting Nia like a linebacker. They crashed into the medication room as bullets chewed through the wall where the young nurse had stood. "Stay down," Faith hissed. Her heart hammered, but her hands were steady, always steady. Crawl to room 7, get Maria to the supply closet and back, lock it from inside. But move, now! Nia crawled, and Faith turned to face mathematics she understood. 6 armed men, 40 vulnerable people, 1 woman with medical knowledge and no more fucks to give about her own safety. Room 12 was closest. Tommy Williams gasped for air that wouldn't come, his grandmother clutching him. The explosion had triggered a severe asthma attack. His lips were turning blue. Faith grabbed the crash cart, wheeling it into the hallway. Bullets sparked off metal. She used the cart as a shield, pushing toward room 12. Her size, the body that had been mocked, dismissed, fetishized, became advantage. She was harder to move, harder to stop. A gunman rounded the corner, young, maybe 25, cartel tattoos on his neck. He raised his weapon. Faith jabbed the epinephrine auto-injector she'd palmed into his thigh. 0.3 milligrams of adrenaline straight into the femoral muscle. His eyes went wide. Heart rate would spike to 180, 200 beats per minute. Chest pain, panic, his body betraying him. He dropped, clutching his chest, certain he was dying. He wasn't, but he'd think he was for the next 10 minutes. Faith stepped over him, reached Tommy. "Deep breath, baby, I've got you." She administered albuterol through the nebulizer, hands rock steady despite the gunfire. Tommy's oxygen saturation climbed. His grandmother prayed in Spanish. "Closet in back," Faith told her. "Take him. Don't come out until police arrive." The woman nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd lived in this neighborhood long enough to know survival wasn't pretty. Faith moved through the clinic like an avenging angel in scrubs, room by room, patient by patient. A kidney dialysis patient too weak to move. Faith disconnected his lines, lifted all 140 pounds of him in a fireman's carry, deposited him in the reinforced records room. A woman withdrawing from opioids, shaking and terrified. Faith pressed a syringe of Ativan into her hand. 0.25 milligrams. Use it if you need it. She knew this building better than the gunman did. Every supply closet, every exit, every weakness in the structure. She'd consulted on the renovation, insisted on reinforced doors for the pharmacy, extra locks on medication storage. The second gunman she caught rifling through her office. Looking for what? Patient files? Evidence of Lee's involvement? Faith grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall. 20 pounds of pressurized chemical. She swung it like a baseball bat into his head. He crumbled. She used zip ties from the supply cabinet to secure his wrists, the same ties she used for restraining violent patients in the ER. 3 gunmen down or neutralized, 3 more somewhere in the building. Then she heard it, Maria screaming from room 7. Faith ran. Her knees protested. 42 years and 260 pounds of pressure, but she ran anyway. The room's door hung open. Inside, Maria writhed on the bed, contractions coming hard. Blood stained the sheets. Too much blood. Placental abruption. The explosion's shockwave had separated the placenta from the uterine wall. Mother and baby both dying. A gunman stood in the doorway, weapon trained on Maria. "Where is Lee Min-ho?" he demanded in accented English. "Where is the boss?" Maria gasped, understanding nothing except pain. Faith stepped into the room, hands raised. "She doesn't know anything. She's in labor. Let me help her." "You're the nurse." The gunman's eyes narrowed behind his mask. "You're Faith Lewis." "Yes, you're coming with us. After I deliver this baby. Now. Shoot me then." Faith moved to Maria's bedside, turning her back on the gun, calculating. If he wanted her alive for leverage, he wouldn't fire. If he was here to kill, she'd already be dead. But if this woman and her baby die, Lee will paint this city with your blood. You know that, right? He'll start with your family, work his way through everyone you've ever loved. The gunman hesitated. Good. Doubt was an opening. Faith checked Maria's cervix. 8 centimeters. Transition. The baby was coming whether they wanted it or not. Maria, look at me. You're going to push. On the next contraction, you push. I can't. Yes, you can. You've done this 3 times. Your body knows. The contraction hit. Maria bore down, screaming. Faith supported the perineum, her hands slick with blood. The baby's head crowned. Another push. Shoulders. Then a rush of fluid and life. A tiny girl, purple and perfect, wailing her arrival into a world on fire. Faith clamped and cut the cord, suctioned the infant's airway, checked her over with practiced efficiency. APGAR score of 8. Good. She wrapped the baby, placed her on Maria's chest. Congratulations, Faith said softly. Another daughter. That's when the gunman made his mistake. He lowered his weapon, just for a second, distracted by the primal scene of birth. Faith grabbed the scalpel from the delivery tray. 20 years of cutting into flesh taught you exactly where to strike. She pivoted, drove the blade into the gunman's thigh. Femoral artery, 2 inches deep. Blood sprayed. He screamed, dropping his weapon. Faith kicked it away, applied pressure to the wound. Even now, even here, she couldn't watch someone bleed out. "Naya," she shouted, "I need you." The young nurse appeared, pale but present. "Take Maria and the baby. Supply closet. Lock it." "What about him?" Faith looked at the gunman, her hands red with his blood. "I'll keep him alive. Lee will want to talk to him." Lee Min-ho arrived 7 minutes later with 15 of his men. Faith heard the gunfire change pitch. Lee's people, organized and lethal, cutting through the remaining cartel soldiers. She stayed with her patient, maintaining pressure on his femoral artery. The gunman's face had gone gray, shock setting in. She'd seen it 1,000 times. "Why?" he gasped in Spanish. "Why save me?" "Because I'm a nurse," Faith answered. "It's what I do." The clinic doors burst open. Lee moved through the smoke and chaos like a force of nature. Armani suit splattered with blood that wasn't his, eyes dark with the kind of fury that ended bloodlines. His guards fanned out, securing the space. Then he saw her, Faith, kneeling in a pool of blood, hands pressed to an enemy's wound. Her scrubs destroyed, face streaked with soot, alive. The relief that crossed his face lasted 1 second before the rage returned. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her up, hands framing her face. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Don't lie to me." "I'm not hurt, Min-ho. I'm fine." His hands moved over her body, checking for wounds with the desperate efficiency of a man who understood loss. When he found nothing but bruises, he pulled her against his chest. She felt him shaking. "I had it under control," she said against his shoulder. "You had 3 gunmen neutralized, delivered a baby during a placental abruption, and saved an enemy's life." His voice was rough with emotions he hadn't learned to name. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. Can't I be both?" Lee pulled back, looked at her. Really looked. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. And terror. The combination of loving someone who refused to be protected. Yuri, Lee's head of security, approached. "Boss, we secured the building. 6 cartel soldiers. 3 dead, 3 in custody." He glanced at Faith with something approaching respect. "The nurse took down 3 of them herself." "I used medicine," Faith corrected. "Epinephrine, blunt force trauma, surgical precision. Same tools, different application." Lee's jaw tightened. "We need to interrogate the survivors." "Not him," Faith gestured to the gunman whose life she'd saved. "Not yet. He needs surgery or he'll bleed out." "Let him." "No." They stared at each other, the nurse and the killer, partners in a dance neither had choreographed. Finally, Lee nodded. "Yuri, take him to Dr. Park's clinic. Tell Park it's a priority." He turned back to Faith. We need to talk. I need to check on my patients first. Faith, my patients, Minho, then we talk. She moved through the clinic, assessing damage both physical and human. Maria and her baby, stable. Tommy Williams, breathing normally. Naya, traumatized but uninjured. The grandmother, praying. Her staff, shaken but alive. One casualty, Mr. Park from room 14 had been hit by shrapnel from the first explosion, fragment lodged near his spine. He'd need surgery, might never walk again. Faith stood over his unconscious body, feeling the weight of every choice she'd made. This man, 73 years old, retired postal worker, 3 grandchildren, was collateral damage in her war. It's not your fault, Lee said quietly behind her. Isn't it? They came here for me, for leverage against you. Everyone I treat, everyone who walks through those doors, they're all targets now. So what do you want to do? Walk away? I don't know. Faith turned to face him. I saved lives today, Minho, but one of my patients got hurt because of me. How do I balance that math? Before Lee could answer, Yuri returned. His face was grim. Boss, you need to hear this. The one she saved, he's talking, says this was just reconnaissance. The real attack is coming, something bigger. Faith felt ice slide down her spine. How much bigger? He doesn't know details, but he knows it's soon. And he knows... Yuri hesitated. Say it, Lee commanded. He knows about your mother's house, your businesses, every location you care about. Yuri's eyes found Faith's. They've been watching for weeks. They have everything. The clinic's emergency lights cast red shadows across Faith's face. She'd saved 40 people today, used her medical knowledge as a weapon, crossed lines she couldn't uncross. And it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Lee's hand found hers, squeezed. We'll figure this out. Will we? Or will I keep patching people up while your world tears them apart? Our world, he corrected quietly. You chose this. I gave you every chance to walk away. He was right. 3 weeks ago, when she'd first seen the violence that paid for her clinic, she could have left, could have reported everything, could have saved herself. Instead, she'd stayed, healed him, fallen in love with a man whose hands killed as easily as hers saved. Faith looked around the clinic, her clinic, built with blood money and good intentions. Smoke still hung in the air, the scent of gunpowder mixed with antiseptic, birth and death sharing the same space. What do we do now? She asked. Lee's expression hardened into something she recognized. The mafia boss, not the man who whispered her name in the dark. Now, we find out who else is coming, and we make sure they regret it. Dawn had fully broken. Chicago's morning rush starting outside. The world moving forward like nothing had happened. Like Faith Lewis hadn't just discovered she could be a healer and a weapon simultaneously. Like she hadn't just realized that loving Lee Min-ho meant becoming someone her younger self wouldn't recognize. The captured cartel soldier was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. The real war was coming, and Faith had no idea if she was ready for who she'd have to become to survive it. The problem with loving a monster, Faith discovered, was learning to see your own reflection in his eyes and recognizing the monster growing there too. 48 hours after the clinic attack, she stood in Lee's downtown penthouse, tracking patterns on a wall covered with surveillance photos, hospital admissions records, and red string connecting dots that told a story she'd been blind to. Here, she said, tapping a cluster of photos. St. Catherine's ER, 3 weeks ago, 4 admissions in one night, all listed as training accidents, orthopedic injuries, boxer's fractures, radius fractures, patterned bruising. Her finger moved to another hospital. Mercy General, 2 weeks ago, 6 admissions, same pattern. Yuri leaned in, steadying the images. The Israeli ex-IDF soldier had stopped looking at Faith like she was a liability. Now there was something else in his eyes. Calculation. They're training, building an army. Not just training. Faith pulled up medical records on her tablet. Information she'd collected through her network of ER nurses across Chicago. The nursing community was tight-knit, gossiped freely. She'd made calls, asked questions, promised favors. They're training for something specific. Look at the injury patterns: close quarters combat, room clearing, urban warfare. Lee stood at the window, silhouette dark against the Chicago skyline. 2 days of strategy sessions had carved hollows under his eyes. His body was healing. Faith's therapy had unlocked 15 years of trauma, but the cost of protecting what they'd built was showing. How many? He asked, without turning. Based on admission rates across 12 hospitals, conservative estimate, 40 trained fighters. Could be 60. For what? I don't know, but they're getting hurt during training, which means they're pushing hard. Whatever they're planning, it's soon. Reina Kimura entered the room, the 48-year-old operations specialist moving with the lethal grace that came from Israeli Defense Force training. She'd become Faith's unlikely mentor in this world, teaching her to read threats, to move tactically, to survive. The one you saved is stable, Reina said, nodding to Faith. Doctors say he'll keep the leg. He's talking more. Seems grateful you didn't let him bleed out. Gratitude doesn't mean trust, Lee said. No, but it means leverage. Reina dropped a folder on the table. His name is Mateo Cruz, 26, parents in Jalisco, little sister in community college. He's low level, but he knows things. Faith picked up the folder, studied Mateo's photo. She'd saved his life. That made them connected in ways she was still processing. In the ER, you saved people and they left. Clean. Final. But this was complicated. What does he know? Lee asked. The cartel isn't just after Faith for leverage. They want her specifically because she's been treating your people. She's seen faces, documented injuries, noted patterns. She has intelligence she doesn't even realize is valuable. The words hit Faith like a diagnosis she should have caught earlier. The medical records, every patient I've treated, every intake form, every ID check, every emergency contact. Every member of my organization who's walked through your clinic's doors, Lee finished. His voice was carefully controlled. Names, addresses, families. Jesus! Faith sat down hard. I've been documenting your entire network, creating a map for them. You were doing your job. My job just armed our enemies. Silence filled the penthouse. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to the war being waged in its shadows. Yuri broke the quiet. We need to secure those records, wipe the servers, disappear the files. That's evidence tampering, Faith said automatically, nurse instincts dying hard. That's survival, Reina corrected, not unkindly. You're in the water now, Faith. Sharks are circling. Time to choose whether you're swimming or drowning. Faith met Lee's eyes across the room. He'd given her space since the attack, no pressure, no demands, letting her process. But she could see the question there. Are you in or out? I'm in, she said quietly, but I do it my way. We don't destroy the records, we use them. Explain, Lee said. Faith stood, walked to the evidence board. Her mind was working the problem like a complex diagnosis. They've been copying my files. That means they have to access them somehow, remotely or physically. Either way, there's a pattern, an access point. We can trace it. And when we find it, Yuri asked, we feed them false information, make them think they're getting intelligence when really we're controlling what they see. Lee crossed to her, studying her face. You're suggesting we turn your clinic into a honey trap. I'm suggesting we use their strategy against them. They want information, we give them information. Wrong information. Lead them where we want them. A slow smile crossed Lee's face. The expression was dangerous, proud. 3 weeks ago, you were worried about keeping your nursing license. 3 weeks ago, I hadn't delivered a baby during a gunfight. Faith held his gaze. I'm adapting. You're doing more than adapting. Lee's hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek. The touch was gentle despite the violence in his eyes. You're becoming something new. Is that good or bad? That's up to you. Later, after Yuri and Reyna left to coordinate security protocols, Faith and Lee stood alone in his bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that looked peaceful in the dark. Deceptive. "I need to ask you something," Faith said, "and I need you to be honest." Lee loosened his tie, watching her. "Always. Does it bother you that I'm getting good at this?" "At what?" "At being part of your world. At weaponizing my medical knowledge, at not flinching anymore when Yuri talks about eliminating threats." She sat on the edge of his bed, exhaustion finally catching up. "I'm changing, Minho. I can feel it, and I don't know if that scares me or excites me." Lee knelt in front of her, hands on her thighs. At 45, he moved like a younger man now. The physical therapy she'd designed working miracles. The trauma that had locked his body for 15 years was releasing, including the most intimate parts. "You're not becoming me," he said. "You're becoming yourself, the version that was always there but had permission to be safe." His thumbs traced circles through her scrubs. She'd come straight from the clinic, hadn't bothered changing. "I love that you can deliver a baby during a gunfight. I love that you neutralized 3 armed men with medical tools. I love that you're strategic and fierce, but I also love that you saved the man who came to kill you, that you can't watch someone bleed out even when they deserve it. That's weakness in your world. That's humanity. Don't lose it, please." His voice cracked slightly. "I need you to keep that part. Because if you don't, I'll drown in what I am." Faith pulled him up, kissed him, tasted desperation and hope. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer. She'd spent 42 years apologizing for taking up space. Lee made her feel powerful in her size. "Show me," she whispered against his mouth. "Show you what?" "That it still works, that I really did heal you." His eyes darkened with understanding. 15 years of erectile dysfunction, trauma response locked into his body from an attack that had nearly killed him. 3 weeks of her hands, her knowledge, her stubborn refusal to give up. The physical healing mirroring emotional vulnerability. Lee lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. He was hard against her. Proof of miracles she'd worked with PT exercises and patience. He carried her to the bed, laid her down with a reverence that made her chest tight. "You're beautiful," he said in Korean. She's learning the language, understood more than she let on. "You're biased. I'm accurate." He undressed her slowly, clinical scrubs giving way to skin he mapped with his hands. Faith had spent a lifetime being objectified by men who fetishized her size, or being dismissed by men who found her invisible. Lee did neither. He saw her. Every curve, every stretch mark, every inch of power. When he entered her, they both gasped. The intimacy of it, the vulnerability of his body working, responding, alive in ways it hadn't been since he was 30, made this more than physical. "Faith," he breathed, Korean words mixing with English, terms of endearment she was learning. "My healer, my nurse, my impossible woman." She moved with him, bodies finding rhythm. Outside, Chicago sparkled. Inside, they created their own light. After, they lay tangled together, his head on her chest, her fingers in his dark hair, both processing what this meant, the healing complete, the relationship permanent. "My mother wants to meet you," Lee said into the comfortable silence. Faith's hand stilled. "Your mother? The Korean matriarch who probably expected you to marry some nice girl from Seoul? My mother who raised me alone after my father was killed, who ran this organization from the shadows for 5 years until I was old enough to take over, who would sell her soul to see me happy." He propped up on one elbow. "She knows about you, about us. She wants to meet the woman who fixed her son. And say what? Hi, Mrs. Lee, I'm sleeping with your son and enabling his criminal empire? Her name is Ji-woo, and she's seen worse, trust me." The meeting was arranged for the next evening. Faith showed up at the Lee family home in Kenwood, a mansion that screamed old money and older secrets, wearing her best dress and lowest expectations. Mrs. Lee opened the door herself, 68 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with eyes that could strip paint. She looked Faith up and down once, then smiled. "You're bigger than the photos," she said in accented English. "Good. My son needs someone who can't be broken easily." Faith blinked. Thank you? Come in. We'll have tea." The living room was traditional Korean, low tables, floor cushions, subtle elegance. Mrs. Lee poured tea with practiced grace, while Faith sat carefully, hyper-aware of her size in this delicate space. "Min-ho tells me you're a nurse." "Yes, ma'am. 20 years in trauma. And you know what he does, what we do." "Yes." "But you stayed anyway." Faith met the older woman's eyes. "I stayed because I saw him, not the mafia boss, not the reputation, him. And he needed help that no one else could give." Mrs. Lee set down her teacup. "I was 21 when I married Dae Jung. My parents disowned me. He was Yakuza, Korean boy who rose through Japanese ranks. Dangerous, beautiful, doomed." Her expression softened with old grief. "I knew what I was choosing. The violence, the fear, the price of loving a man the world called criminal. What happened to him? What happens to all of them eventually? He was killed when Min-ho was 13. I took over the organization temporarily, discovered I was good at it, better than my husband in some ways." She smiled. "Women in this world have advantages. People underestimate us, think we're soft. But you're not. I'm steel wrapped in silk. As are you, I think." Faith felt something unlock in her chest, understanding from an unexpected source. "Do you regret it, marrying him?" "Every day." Mrs. Lee's honesty was brutal, and not for a single second. "Love in this world is complicated, Faith. It costs everything. But the alternative, loving someone safe and feeling nothing, that's a death too, just slower. He's healing, physically. The trauma response is resolving. I know. He smiles now. I haven't seen that in 15 years. Mrs. Lee reached across the table, took Faith's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you for giving me my son back." They talked for 2 hours. Mrs. Lee shared stories, her husband's death, Min-ho's rage afterwards, the years of watching her son drift through life with a broken body and broken spirit. Faith shared her own journey, Mississippi poverty, nursing school debt, the clinic dream, the moment she decided to cross the line. You're going to have to kill someone eventually. Not neutralize, not incapacitate. Kill. Are you prepared for that? Faith's breath caught. I don't know. That's an honest answer. Better than false bravado. The older woman refilled their tea. When the moment comes, remember this. Hesitation gets you killed. Guilt is a luxury for afterward. In the moment, you choose life or death. Make peace with that now. When Faith left, Mrs. Lee hugged her, quick and fierce. Protect him. He's strong, but you make him vulnerable. That's both gift and curse. Faith drove back to the clinic through darkening streets, processing. She'd come to Chicago to escape her past, built a life healing people, found love in the most impossible place, and now she was receiving murder advice from a 68-year-old Korean grandmother. The clinic was quiet when she arrived. Nia was working the night shift, checking on the few patients they'd admitted post-attack. Faith headed to her office to review case files. The package was sitting on her desk, small, unmarked, tied with string. Faith's heart stopped. The security protocols Lee had implemented were extensive. Nothing should get through, but someone had. She called Lee. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? There's a package in my office. Don't touch it. I'm sending... I already opened it. Her voice was distant, shocked. Faith, what is it? She stared at the contents spilling across her desk. Medical records, hundreds of them. Photocopies of every patient file from the past 6 months. Every name, every address, every connection to Lee's organization. And a note, handwritten. We've been watching. We know everything. And we're coming for everyone you love. Faith's hands trembled for the first time in 48 hours. Min-ho, they've been in my system. They have everything. I'm coming. Don't leave the building. But it was too late for protection. The cartel had already invaded, not with bullets this time, with information, with leverage, with the promise of violence that made Faith's medical knowledge feel suddenly inadequate. She looked at the files, saw names of people she'd treated, kids with asthma, mothers giving birth, old men with heart conditions, every one of them now a potential target because they'd walked through her doors. This was the price Mrs. Lee had talked about, the cost of loving a killer, the tax paid in innocent blood. Faith sat down at her desk, surrounded by evidence of her own complicity, and did the math. 40 patients currently in the system, hundreds more documented, all of them vulnerable, all of them hers to protect. She'd saved Lee's life, fixed his body, opened her heart to the devil, and now the bill was coming due in casualties she couldn't predict. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You can't heal everyone, nurse. Some people are meant to die." Faith stared at the message. Then she stood, walked to her office door, locked it, sat back down at her computer and started working. Not panicking, not running, working. If they wanted information warfare, she'd give them information warfare. She'd spent 20 years learning how to read medical records, spot patterns, trace connections. Now she'd use that knowledge backward, figure out who was accessing her files, how, when, why. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and Faith Lewis RN, trauma nurse, healer of broken men, was about to discover just how far she'd go to protect what she loved. Turned out, there were no limits. That's what terrified her most. The mole was discovered on day 5, and the betrayal came from a direction Faith never anticipated. She'd spent 72 hours tracking digital footprints through her clinic's system with Yuri's tech specialists. The pattern emerged gradually. Someone with admin-level access, downloading files during off hours. Not a hack, an inside job. But not from Lee's organization, from hers. Tuesday morning, Faith confronted Sarah Chen in the clinic's break room. Sarah, 39 years old, head nurse, Faith's right hand for 3 years, single mother, impeccable references, gentle with patients, the last person anyone would suspect. "The downloads traced back to your login," Faith said quietly. The break room was empty. She'd made sure of that. Just the two of them and the truth. Sarah's face went pale, then hardened. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." "You know what it's like, Faith, the debt, the pressure. I've got 2 kids in college, an ex-husband who won't pay child support, student loans from nursing school that'll follow me to my grave." Sarah's voice cracked. "When they approached me, offered $50,000 for access to the files, I thought..." "You thought what? That patient confidentiality was negotiable? That selling out our patients was justified by your financial problems? I thought you'd understand. You were drowning in debt 6 months ago, couldn't make rent, working double shifts, one emergency away from bankruptcy. Then suddenly," she gestured at the renovated clinic, "all this, new equipment, expanded space, your loans mysteriously paid off. You think I don't know where that money came from?" Faith felt the words like a physical blow. "How long have you known?" "Since the beginning. I'm not stupid. Korean Mafia Boss shows up in your ER, you disappear for hours. Next thing anyone knows, you've got unlimited funding." Sarah laughed bitterly. "You sold out to criminals. Don't stand there judging me for doing the same thing." The parallel was grotesque and accurate. "There's a difference," Faith said carefully. "I chose to partner with Lee knowing the cost. You chose to endanger our patients without their consent. Every file you copied put someone at risk. Our patients? Most of them are criminals too. Gang members, drug dealers, people in Lee's organization. I gave the cartel information about criminals, not innocents." Maria Gonzalez, 4 kids, works in a laundromat. Her only crime was going into labor at the wrong clinic. Faith's voice was steel. Tommy Williams, 8 years old, asthma. His grandmother brought him here because we don't ask about insurance. You put him in a file that went to the cartel. You made him a target. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You didn't think they'd use the information to hurt people? What did you think they wanted it for?" Silence. heavy and damning. "Did you know about the attack? The one that killed the clinic?" "No, God no. They just wanted files. Said they needed intelligence about competing organizations. I didn't know they'd—" Sarah stopped. "When the explosions happened, I realized what I'd done, but by then it was too late." Faith wanted to rage, wanted to unleash the fury she'd been containing since finding that package on her desk. But Sarah was right about one thing. Faith had crossed lines too, partnered with a killer, accepted blood money, built her dream on a foundation of violence. Who was she to judge? "What do we do now?" Sarah asked. Faith pulled out her phone, dialed Lee. He answered immediately. "I found the mole." "Who?" "Sarah Chen, my head nurse. The cartel paid her for access." A pause. Then, "Bring her to the safe house. I'll handle it." Sarah's face went white. She'd heard the stories, what Lee Min-ho did to traitors. "Faith, please." Faith ended the call, looked at the woman who'd been her colleague, her friend. "Did you tell them anything else? About Lee? About me?" "No, just files. I swear." "I want to believe you." "Then let me go. I'll disappear. Take my kids and run. You'll never see me again." Faith considered it. Sarah had 2 children, teenagers who'd lose their mother if this went the way it was headed. But those $50,000 had bought information that endangered dozens of others. Math again. Always math. "I can't let you go," Faith said. "Too many people are at risk, but I'll make you a deal. You tell Lee everything. Names, contacts, exactly what information you gave them, and I'll argue for mercy. His mercy isn't worth much." "No, but mine might be." The interrogation happened in a warehouse Lee's organization used for situations requiring discretion. Faith insisted on being present, not because she wanted to watch, but because Sarah deserved a witness, someone to ensure it didn't go too far. Lee's questions were methodical, surgical. He extracted information with the same precision Faith used to extract bullets. Sarah talked, names spilling out between sobs, the cartel contact who'd approached her, the dead drop locations, the payment structure. "One last question," Lee said. His voice was gentle, terrifyingly so. "Why didn't you come to me? If you needed money, I would have helped." Sarah laughed, broken and bitter. "Come to you? I'm supposed to ask the Korean mob for a loan? You're supposed to understand that Faith cares about her staff. She would have moved heaven and earth to help you. Instead, you betrayed her." Lee stood, straightening his cuffs. "That's what I can't forgive. Not the theft, the betrayal." "What are you going to do?" Sarah whispered. Lee looked at Faith. The question wasn't for Sarah, it was for her. This was her world now. Her rules mattered. What did she want? Faith thought about mercy and justice, about Sarah's children and her patients, about Maria giving birth during gunfire and Tommy gasping for air, about the price of protection and the cost of compassion. "We let her go," Faith said. Yuri's head snapped around. "Boss, that's—" "We let her go," Faith repeated. "But first, she calls her cartel contact, sets up a meeting, says she has new information, something big about Lee's upcoming movements. When they show up, we're waiting." Understanding lit Lee's eyes. "You want to use her as bait. I want to use her as exactly what she was for them, an asset. Except this time, she's our asset." Faith turned to Sarah. "You do this, you get your $50,000. Clean money from Lee's legitimate businesses, enough to handle your debt and set up somewhere new. But you leave Chicago, change your name, start over, and you never work as a nurse again." "Why would you help me?" Sarah asked. "Because you were right. I did sell out to get this clinic. I made deals with the devil to help people. That makes me complicit in the system that put you in debt, that forced you to make impossible choices." Faith's voice hardened. "But this is your one chance. You betray us again, and I won't argue for mercy. I'll stand aside and let Lee do what he does." Sarah agreed. The meeting was set for Saturday night. 72 hours to prepare. Faith spent those 3 days transforming the clinic into a fortress while maintaining normal operations. Extra security, cameras in every corner, new protocols for patient intake. Raina supervised the tactical elements while Faith managed the medical side. On Friday afternoon, Mrs. Lee showed up unexpectedly. "I heard about the nurse," she said, settling into Faith's office with tea she'd brought herself. "You chose mercy. I chose pragmatism. She's more valuable as bait than as a corpse." "You're lying. You chose mercy because you understand her desperation, because you're still a healer at heart." Mrs. Lee studied Faith over her teacup. "That's good. Don't lose that. Everyone keeps saying that. Don't lose your compassion. Don't lose your humanity. But what if I need to lose it to survive? Then you'll lose Min-ho too. He needs your softness to balance his hardness. The day you become like him, you'll stop being what he loves." Faith slumped in her chair. "I'm so tired, Ji-woo. Tired of balancing these impossible equations. Save the enemy and endanger friends. Show mercy and invite betrayal. Love a killer and keep my soul. Welcome to my life for the past 45 years. Mrs. Lee smiled sadly. "It doesn't get easier. You just get stronger." "I don't feel strong. Strength isn't feeling fearless. It's being terrified and moving forward anyway. You delivered a baby during a gunfight. You neutralized 3 armed men. You're negotiating with killers to save a traitor. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. I'm becoming something I don't recognize." "No, you're becoming yourself without apology. The world kept you small, Faith, told you to be quiet, take up less space, play it safe. Min-ho broke those chains. Now you're expanding into who you always could have been. It's uncomfortable. Growth hurts, but it's not loss." Mrs. Lee left, taking her tea and her wisdom. Faith sat alone in the gathering darkness, processing. That night, Lee found her on the clinic's roof. She came up here when her head got too loud, the Chicago skyline offering perspective. "You don't have to do this," he said, standing beside her. "The meeting tomorrow. I can handle it without you. I know, but Sarah is mine. My hire, my responsibility, my failure to see the warning signs. She played you well. Professional con artists couldn't have done better. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you forgive yourself." Lee turned her to face him. "You're carrying too much, Faith. Let me shoulder some of it." "How? By killing people who threaten us? By eliminating problems with bullets? If necessary, yes." The honesty was brutal. This was who he was. No apologies. "I watched you interrogate Sarah. You were terrifying. Controlled violence wrapped in a designer suit. And the worst part, I wasn't horrified. I was impressed. What does that make me? Human. Complicated. Mine." Lee's hands framed her face. "You're not becoming a monster, Faith. You're becoming realistic. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, because you still tried to save Sarah, still argued for mercy, still see people as people, not just problems to eliminate. That's what separates you from me. And if that changes, if I stop arguing for mercy, then I'll argue for it. We'll take turns being human for each other." He kissed her forehead. "That's what partnership means." Saturday night arrived with cold rain and colder intentions. The meeting was set for midnight at a parking garage downtown. Cliché, but functional. Sarah made the call, voice shaking. "I have new information. Lee's entire shipping schedule for the next month, but I want double the money." The cartel took the bait. Faith watched from the surveillance van with Yuri while Lee's teams positioned themselves. 20 men, heavily armed, waiting for targets who didn't know they were walking into a trap. "You should be somewhere safe. Boss is gonna kill me for letting you come. Boss knows I make my own choices." That's what scares him. Sarah stood in the designated spot, laptop bag clutched to her chest. She looked terrified. Probably was. This was her last chance at redemption or her first step to death. The cartel arrived right on time. 3 vehicles, 6 men. Professional. Careful. Not careful enough. The lead man approached Sarah. older, military-bearing, scarred hands. "Do you have the information? Do you have the money?" He gestured. A duffel bag was produced. Sarah reached for it. That's when Lee's people moved. The coordination was beautiful in its brutality. Flashbangs first, disorienting, then controlled fire, targeting weapons, not people. Lee wanted prisoners, not corpses, information, not bodies. 4 cartel soldiers surrendered immediately. The other 2 tried to fight, went down hard. Within 90 seconds, it was over. Faith watched Lee walk into the light, gun holstered but present. He approached the lead man, the one who'd spoken to Sarah, said something too quiet for the microphones to catch. The man's face went pale. Then Lee looked directly at the surveillance camera, at Faith. His expression said, "This is what I am. This is what I do. Still love me?" She did. God help her, she did. The interrogations lasted through the night. By dawn, Lee had names, locations, strategic plans. The cartel's entire Chicago operation mapped out. They'd come for intelligence and left giving it instead. Sarah was put on a plane to Seattle with her $50,000 and a new identity. Faith never saw her again. Didn't want to. "We need to make a decision," Lee said as Sunday's sun broke over the city. They were back at his penthouse, exhausted and wired. "This pattern continues. They strike, we respond. They strike again. We're always reacting, never controlling. What are you suggesting?" What Faith suggested days ago. We go public. Use your platform as a nurse. Expose what they're doing. The medical supply trafficking. The exploitation of healthcare systems. Turn your visibility into armor. That'll make me an even bigger target. It'll make you too public to eliminate quietly. Right now you're a secret they can bury. Make yourself news and killing you becomes complicated. Lee's jaw tightened. "I hate this plan, but it's smart," Faith considered. Going public meant ending her anonymity, becoming a face, a name, a target. But it also meant controlling the narrative, owning her choices instead of hiding them. "There's something else," Lee said. "Something I need to tell you." His tone made her stomach drop. "What?" "Your family, in Mississippi, the ones who disowned you? What about them? The cartel found them, sent people to your mother's house, your brother's restaurant. They haven't acted yet, but they know where they are." Faith felt the floor drop away. My mother who told me I was going to hell for my weight? The brother who said I'd embarrass the family? Those relatives? Yes. And you protected them anyway? I sent people without telling you because I knew you'd say to let them suffer, to let them face the consequences of rejecting you. Lee's eyes were soft. But I also know you. Know that if something happened to them, you'd carry that guilt, even if they don't deserve your protection. Faith started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of the Korean Mafia protecting her judgmental Southern Baptist family was too much. "Did you tell them," she asked, "that their sinful fat daughter sent help?" "No, my people were invisible. Just made sure no one got close." "Good. Let them think God saved them." Faith sobered. "How bad is it, Minho? Really? How many people are in danger because of us?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds if we count extended networks. And our options? End this, permanently, before more people get hurt." Faith knew what "end this" meant in Lee's world. Total war, elimination, bodies. "When?" she asked. "Soon. We're planning the operation now. But first," Lee pulled out a small box. "I need to ask you something." Faith's heart stopped. "Minho, if that's what I think it is, it's not a ring. Open it. Inside, a key. Simple, steel, unremarkable. To what? My home. The penthouse, the family house, every property I own, every safe house, every escape route, every resource." Lee's voice was steady. "I'm giving you access to everything. Not because you're my girlfriend, because you're my partner. Equal stake, equal say, equal risk." "This is insane. We've known each other 3 weeks." I've known you for 3 weeks. You've known me, really known me, seen every ugly truth for 3 weeks. Most couples date for years and never reach this level of honesty. We skipped the pretense, went straight to the truth. Now I'm asking, are you in, fully in, or do you want out before it gets worse? Faith looked at the key, at the man holding it, at the future he was offering. Dangerous, complicated, impossible, real. She thought about Mrs. Lee's words. Love in this world costs everything, but the alternative is a slower death. She thought about delivering babies during gunfights, neutralizing armed men with medical knowledge, arguing for mercy while planning wars, becoming someone her younger self wouldn't recognize, but her present self desperately needed to be. She took the key. I'm in, Faith said, fully in, but I have conditions. Name them. We protect civilians first, always. Your people, my patients, innocent bystanders. Their safety comes before strategy. Agreed. We maintain ethical boundaries where possible. I won't kill someone who can be neutralized. I won't cross certain lines unless there's no other choice. Agreed. And you continue therapy, physical and psychological. Just because your body works now doesn't mean the trauma is healed. I need you to keep working on yourself. Lee smiled. Agreed. Anything else? Yes. If I say stop, you stop. If I say this is too far, we pull back. I don't care about pride or tactics or winning. My word carries weight. Equal partnership means equal veto power. You want final say in operations. I want mutual respect for limits, yours and mine. Lee considered this. She could see him calculating, weighing, measuring. His organization had always operated on hierarchy, authority flowing from the top. Now she was asking for something revolutionary, shared power. Okay, he said finally, equal veto power. But it goes both ways. If I say something's too dangerous, you listen. Fair. They shook on it, then kissed, sealing the bargain the way partners did when words weren't enough. Outside, Chicago woke up, civilians heading to work, kids going to school, the mundane machinery of normal life. None of them knew that a nurse and a killer had just formed an alliance that would reshape the city's underworld. None of them knew war was coming, but Faith knew, and for the first time since this started, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. The attack came on Wednesday night during Faith's scheduled shift at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She'd kept her 2 shifts per week at the ER, partly because her medical license required it, partly because she refused to let the cartel dictate her life, mostly because some part of her needed to remember who she'd been before Lee Min-ho walked through her clinic doors. 8:47 p.m. Faith was suturing a construction worker's lacerated hand when the first explosion hit the hospital's east wing. The building shuddered, lights flickered. Somewhere, someone screamed. Faith's muscle memory from the clinic attack kicked in immediately. She dropped the suture needle, grabbed the crash cart, started barking orders before her conscious mind had fully processed the situation. "Evacuation protocols," she shouted at the charged nurse. "Get ambulatory patients to the stairwells, critical patients to interior rooms, now." Her phone buzzed. Lee. "Faith, where are you?" "Northwestern ER. Something just exploded." "Get out, now. They're hitting multiple locations simultaneously. The hospital, my mother's house, 3 of our warehouses. This is coordinated." Another explosion, closer. The building's fire alarm shrieked to life. Faith watched smoke billow down the corridor. "Min-ho, I can't leave. I've got 30 patients in the ER, half of them critical. If I evacuate them into a war zone, then they're targets either way. At least let me send—" The line went dead. Cell towers overloaded or deliberately jammed. Faith looked around the ER, chaos blooming like blood in water. Staff panicking, patients crying out, machines beeping distress calls. She was the senior nurse on duty. This was her battlefield now. "Listen up," her voice cut through the noise. Everyone turned. "This is a hostile situation, not an accident. Someone is attacking this hospital deliberately. We have two options: panic and die, or organize and survive. I vote survive. Who's with me? Silence. Then Dr. Marcus Chen, the attending physician, stepped forward. What do you need? I need you to triage. Red tags for criticals who can't be moved, yellow for stables who can shelter in place, green for ambulatory who can self-evacuate. I'll coordinate defensive positioning. Defensive? Faith, we're medical professionals, not... We're people in a building under attack. Medical degrees don't stop bullets. She turned to the security guard at the ER entrance. Jerry, 62, retired cop. Jerry, you armed? Pepper spray and a baton. Good enough. I need you to lock down the main entrance after we evacuate Greens. Only authorized personnel in or out. Faith, Marcus started. Marcus, shut up and triage. We don't have time for medical ethics debates. He shut up, started tagging patients. Faith grabbed her phone, tried Lee again, nothing. Tried Yuri, voicemail. Raina, same. She was on her own. Good, she'd been on her own before. Faith moved through the ER with purpose, her mind processing threat assessment and medical necessity simultaneously. The hospital was a maze she knew intimately. 7 years of overnight shifts had taught her every corridor, every supply closet, every structural weakness. The pharmacy was 3 floors up. If the attackers wanted leverage, they'd go for drugs. High value, easy to transport. She called hospital security. This is Faith Lewis, ER. Lock down pharmacy access. No one in or out without direct authorization from administration. Ma'am, we're dealing with multiple breach points. Then deal with this one first. Trust me. She hung up, kept moving. The burn unit was on the 2nd floor. Patients who couldn't be moved without killing them. She radioed the charge nurse up there. Karen, it's Faith. Lock your doors. Don't open for anyone you don't personally recognize. What's happening? War. Stay safe. The construction worker whose hand she'd been suturing grabbed her arm. Nurse, I can help. I was Army. 2 tours in Iraq. Tell me what you need. Faith looked at him. Jose Ramirez, according to his chart. 34, stable vitals, half-sutured hand. You ever clear a building? Many times. Good. Help me secure the ER. Jerry will give you the rundown. She kept moving, room by room, patient by patient. An elderly woman with chest pain moved to the interior conference room. A teenager with a broken leg, given crutches, directed to the parking garage. A child with pneumonia carried by his father to the secure wing. The ER was transforming into a fortress. Then the gunmen arrived. They came through the ambulance bay. 6 men, military-grade weapons, faces covered, professional. The same energy as the clinic attackers, but more prepared. They'd learned from the last failure. Faith watched from the nurses' station as they spread out, clearing rooms, looking for something, someone, looking for her. She grabbed the PA system microphone. This is Faith Lewis. I'm in the ER. If you want me, come get me. Leave the patients alone. The lead gunman's head turned, found her behind the desk, started approaching. Faith's heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. 20 years of trauma nursing had taught her that fear was just another vital sign, important to monitor, useless to obey. Faith Lewis, the gunman said in accented English, you're coming with us. For what purpose? Miguel Reyes wants to talk to you. Miguel Reyes, the cartel leader Lee had mentioned, the man whose brother Faith had refused to treat because he'd been torturing someone in her clinic. This was personal. I'm not going anywhere, Faith said. This is a hospital. You're violating every international law about medical neutrality. We don't care about laws. No, but you care about survival. Take me from here and Lee Min-ho will burn your entire organization to the ground. Leave me alone and maybe you walk away from Chicago alive. The gunman laughed. Lee can't protect you. He's busy watching his mother die. Faith's blood went cold. What did you do? Same thing we're doing here, multiple fronts. He can't be everywhere. Has to choose, save his mother or save his whore. Rage swept through Faith like fever, hot and clarifying. She'd spent 42 years being called worse things than whore. The word didn't hurt. The threat to Mrs. Lee did. "Then I guess we're at an impasse," Faith said calmly, "because I'm not leaving and you're not taking me. So what now?" The gunman raised his weapon. "Now you learn what happens to people who disrespect the cartel." He pulled the trigger. Faith dropped behind the nurse's station as bullets chewed through the computer monitors. Glass exploded, sparking equipment raining down. She crawled toward the supply cabinet, grabbed what she needed. The gunman came around the desk, weapon trained, found Faith crouched, holding a syringe filled with clear liquid. Succinylcholine. Know what that does? I don't care. You should. It's a paralytic, stops every muscle in your body, including the ones that help you breathe. 2 milligrams in your system and you'll suffocate while fully conscious. Nasty way to go. The gunman hesitated. You won't get close enough. Won't I? She moved faster than a woman her size should move. 260 pounds of determination and medical training. The gunman fired, missed. Faith was inside his guard, syringe driving into his thigh. She depressed the plunger. The gunman's eyes went wide, his muscles seized, weapon clattering to the floor. He toppled backward, fully awake but unable to breathe, unable to scream. Faith bent over him, checking his pupils. "You've got about 4 minutes before permanent brain damage. I'll save you if you tell your people to stand down." He couldn't answer, could barely blink. "Your choice," Faith said. Then she stood, walked away. Jose and Jerry had engaged the other gunmen, improvised tactics that wouldn't win military medals but bought time. Patients were hunkered down in interior rooms. Staff was following protocols. Faith moved through the chaos like she was rounding in a normal ER, checked on the paralyzed gunman. 3 minutes, brain still functioning. Administered epinephrine to a patient going into anaphylactic shock. Reassured a crying child. Multitasking had always been her superpower. The remaining gunmen regrouped, realizing this wasn't going as planned. The nurse was supposed to be easy prey. Instead, she'd weaponized the hospital itself. They retreated toward the ambulance bay. Faith let them go. Wasn't about ego or victory. Was about patient safety. The paralyzed gunman was turning blue. Faith sighed, returned with an ambu bag, started manually ventilating him, saving his life despite every instinct screaming to let him suffocate. "You're lucky I'm still a nurse," she muttered, squeezing the bag with practiced rhythm. Her phone buzzed. "Lee." "Faith? I'm fine. Hospital's secure. What about your mother?" "Under siege. They hit the house with 12 men. Yuri's down. He's hurt bad, Faith. Bleeding out. We can't get him to a hospital." "Don't. Bring him to me. I'll meet you at the Morrison Street Clinic." "Faith, you can't." "I've done field surgery before. I can do it again. Get him there. I'm leaving now." She hung up, looked at Dr. Chen. "I have to go." "Faith, you can't leave during—" "I just defended your ER with syringes and threats. I think I can leave when I need to." She gestured to the paralyzed gunman. "Keep ventilating him until the paralytic wears off. About 30 more minutes. Then call the police. Explain everything. Tell them Faith Lewis took responsibility for all civilian defensive actions." "Where are you going?" "To save someone who doesn't deserve it. Story of my life." Faith arrived at the Morrison Street Clinic to find Lee's SUV screeching into the parking lot. Yuri was in the back seat, his tactical vest soaked red. Mrs. Lee sat beside him, applying pressure to a wound Faith could see from 20 feet away. Gunshot to the abdomen, left upper quadrant, likely spleen or kidney damage. Massive internal bleeding. "Get him inside," Faith shouted, already running for the surgical suite. "Exam room 3, it's the most sterile." They carried Yuri in, Lee and 2 of his men moving with military precision. Mrs. Lee followed, her hands red with her bodyguard's blood. Faith scrubbed in as fast as she'd ever scrubbed. No time for full surgical protocol. This was field medicine. combat medicine, the kind she'd trained for in her ER years but prayed she'd never have to use. Yuri was unconscious on the table. Faith checked vitals. BP 70/40 and dropping. Heart rate 140. Respiration shallow. He was bleeding into his abdominal cavity. Without immediate intervention, he'd be dead in 10 minutes. "I need to open him up," Faith said. "Here, now. No anesthesia except local. No surgical team. Just me." "Can you do this?" Lee asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed terror. "I've done emergency exploratory laparotomies in the ER. This isn't different. Except," Faith met his gaze, "success rate is about 60% in ideal conditions. These aren't ideal conditions." "Do it," Mrs. Lee said from the doorway. "Yuri saved my life. Save his." Faith nodded, grabbed a scalpel, made the incision. Blood welled up immediately, dark and fast, venous bleeding mixing with arterial spray. Faith worked by instinct and training, her hands moving through familiar choreography. Pack the wound, identify the source, control the bleeding. The spleen was shattered. Bullet fragments had torn through it like a grenade. Faith made the call immediately. "I have to remove it. It's too damaged to salvage." She'd never performed a splenectomy outside a hospital, never done surgery with the patient's boss watching, never operated knowing failure meant losing not just a patient, but starting a war. Her hands didn't shake. Faith clamped vessels, tied off blood supply, dissected through tissue with the same precision she'd used thousands of times, muscle memory taking over. The spleen came out in pieces, destroyed beyond recognition. Yuri's blood pressure stabilized, heart rate slowed, color returned to his face. 2 hours later, Faith closed the incision with surgical staples. Her back screamed from hunching over the table, her hands cramped from gripping instruments, but Yuri was breathing on his own, vitals stable, alive. "He needs a hospital," Faith said, stripping off her gloves. "Antibiotics, monitoring, ICU care. I can't provide that here." "No hospitals," Lee said. "Too many questions. Then he needs around-the-clock nursing care, IV antibiotics, someone to watch for sepsis, internal bleeding, complications." Faith looked at Mrs. Lee. "I can't do this alone." "You won't have to," the older woman said. "I'll help. You're not a nurse." "No, but I raised a son in this world, learned field medicine by necessity. I can follow instructions." Faith wanted to argue, wanted to insist on proper medical care, but she understood the reality now. Hospitals meant police reports. Police reports meant investigations. Investigations meant exposure. Yuri stayed at the clinic, hidden in a back room Faith converted into makeshift ICU. Faith and Mrs. Lee traded shifts, monitoring vitals, administering medication, watching for the 1,000 things that could go wrong after emergency surgery. Lee coordinated the larger war from the clinic's office. The coordinated attack had hit 6 locations simultaneously: the hospital, his mother's house, 3 warehouses, and the Morrison Street clinic itself. Only Faith's early warning system had saved the clinic. Only blind luck had saved everyone else. 15 of Lee's people were injured, 3 dead. The cartel had paid a heavy price too, 24 confirmed casualties, but they'd accomplished their goal: chaos, disruption, terror. On the second night after Yuri's surgery, Faith found Lee on the clinic roof. He stood at the edge, looking out at the city that was slowly killing them both. "Talk to me," she said, standing beside him. "About what?" "About the fact that you've barely slept since the attack. About the fact that Yuri almost died protecting your mother. About the fact that we're losing this war one piece at a time." Lee's jaw tightened. "We're not losing, we're adapting. We're surviving. That's not the same as winning." "What do you want me to say, Faith? That I'm scared? That I'm exhausted? That I'm watching my world crumble and the only thing keeping me sane is knowing you're safe?" He turned to her, eyes dark with emotion he rarely showed. "Yes, I'm all of those things, but I can't afford to be. My people need a leader, not a man having a breakdown." Faith pulled him into her arms. all 260 pounds of her anchoring him. You can be both with me. That's what partnership means. Lee buried his face in her shoulder. She felt him shaking, not crying, but something close, the release of pressure that had been building for weeks. I almost lost you, he whispered. At the hospital, when I heard the explosions and couldn't reach you, I thought, I know. I felt the same when you said Yuri was down. It's not the same. Yuri is my soldier. He pulled back, looked at her. You're my heart. Without you, I'm just a killer. With you, I'm almost human. You're human regardless, complicated and violent and sometimes monstrous, but human. Faith touched his face. The attack failed because we were ready, because we worked together, because you trusted me to handle the hospital and I trusted you to protect your mother. They'll try again. Yes, and we'll be ready again. Faith, they're not going to stop. Miguel Reyes is making this personal. He wants revenge for his brother, wants to break me by destroying you. This ends with one of us dead. Then we make sure it's him. Lee smiled, tired but genuine. When did you become so bloodthirsty? When someone threatened the people I love. Faith kissed him. I'm done playing defense, Min-ho. It's time we went hunting. The message came 3 days later, delivered by a terrified courier who'd been paid $500 to drop off a package at the clinic. Inside, a burner phone and a note in Spanish. Faith translated aloud. The hospital was mercy. Next time, everyone dies. But I'll give you one chance. Meet me, alone. We discuss terms, or I start killing everyone you've ever touched, beginning with your family in Mississippi. Lee read over her shoulder. It's a trap. Obviously. You're not going. Obviously I am. Faith. He's escalating, Min-ho. Going after my family means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. I want him desperate. I want him off balance. I want him thinking he's won. Faith smiled. Not kindly. Then I want him dead. Lee stared at her. You've changed. Yes, and I'm not sorry about it. They planned for 2 days. Reconnaissance on the meeting location, an abandoned warehouse in Gary, Indiana, exit routes, backup positions, every contingency they could imagine. The night before the meeting, Faith lay in Lee's bed, unable to sleep. He was beside her, equally awake. You scared? Terrified. You? Same. Good. Scared keeps you sharp. They made love in the darkness, slow and desperate, saying goodbye in case it went wrong, promising forever in case it went right. After, Faith traced the scars on Lee's back, the ones that had locked his body for 15 years. These are healing, fading, because of you, because of us. She kissed his shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow, Min-ho, know this. Loving you was worth it. All of it. The violence, the fear, the transformation. You gave me permission to be powerful. You were always powerful. I just helped you see it. Then we're even. The meeting was set for noon. Faith arrived 30 minutes early, alone as requested. The warehouse was industrial decay, rusted metal, broken windows, ghosts of manufacturing jobs. Perfect place for violence. Miguel Reyes was already there. 53 years old according to intelligence reports, cartel enforcer turned regional boss. His brother had been torturing a rival gang member in Faith's clinic when she kicked them both out. The rival had lived. The brother had died later in a police shootout. Miguel blamed Faith for starting the chain of events. Faith Lewis, he said in lightly accented English, the nurse who thinks she's a soldier. Miguel Reyes, the killer who thinks he's a businessman. Faith stood 20 feet away, hands visible. You wanted to talk. Talk. I want you to understand something. My brother wasn't perfect, but he was mine. You turned him away when he needed medical help. That choice killed him. Your brother was torturing someone in my clinic. I turned him away because I don't treat people who abuse my space. He made his choices. I made mine. And now you hide behind Lee Min-ho. Let him fight your wars. Typical woman. If I was hiding, I wouldn't be here. Faith took a step forward. You wanted to meet me face to face? Here I am. So what now? Miguel smiled. Now I teach you what happens to people who interfere in cartel business. He raised his hand. Gunmen emerged from the shadows, 8 of them, surrounding Faith. She didn't move, didn't panic, just smiled. You're wondering where my backup is, Faith said. Wondering why I came alone like you asked. Wondering if I'm stupid or suicidal. Which is it? Neither. I'm strategic. She pulled out her phone, pressed a button. See, I'm not hiding behind Lee. I'm standing beside him. There's a difference. Lee's people emerged from their positions, 20 fighters with precise sight lines. Miguel's men were surrounded before they realized the trap had been reversed. You talk about teaching lessons, Faith said, walking closer to Miguel. Let me teach you one. I'm not a victim, not anymore. You came after my patients, my family, the man I love. You declared war. Now you're going to lose it. Miguel's face twisted with rage. You think this changes anything? I'll hunt you until... Faith moved. Fast. The scalpel was in her hand before Miguel saw it coming. She knew exactly where to strike, not to kill, but to incapacitate. The blade sank into his thigh, finding the femoral nerve. Miguel screamed, leg collapsing. Faith caught him, held him up with strength born from years of lifting patience. The femoral nerve controls your leg, she said calmly. Cut it right, and you'll never walk normally again. Ask me how I know. She twisted the blade slightly. Miguel screamed again. That's for Mrs. Lee, for the patients you terrorized, for every person you threatened. Lee appeared beside her, took Miguel's weight. Faith, that's enough. Is it? She looked at the cartel boss crumpled between them. He was going to kill me, kill you, kill everyone. I know, but you're not a killer. Not yet. Don't become one for him. Faith pulled the scalpel free, stepped back. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash coming hard. She'd crossed a line, not killing, but close enough to see it clearly. Lee's people secured Miguel and his men. No bullets fired, no deaths, just overwhelming tactical superiority and one nurse who'd learned to wield her knowledge like a weapon. As they drove away, Faith stared at her hands. They'd touched Miguel's blood, caused deliberate harm beyond self-defense, crossed from healer to something else. Regret it? Lee asked quietly. I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow. But Miguel Reyes had escaped during transport, his people ambushing the convoy with military precision. The last thing Lee heard was Miguel's voice over a radio. You can't heal everyone, nurse. Some people are meant to die, and so are you. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun, and Faith Lewis, RN, had just learned that some transformations couldn't be undone. Yuri survived, but Faith couldn't stop seeing his blood on her hands. 48 hours after the escape, Faith stood at the clinic's industrial sink, scrubbing for the 17th time that morning, water scalding hot, soap burning her already raw skin. The blood was gone, had been gone for days, but she kept seeing it, dark and thick, pooling on the surgical table, staining her scrubs, marking her transformation from healer to something else. You need to stop, Raina said from the doorway. The Israeli operative had been watching Faith spiral for 2 days. You'll scrub your skin off. Maybe that's the point. Faith, I cut someone, Raina, deliberately, with surgical precision, knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain without killing him. I weaponized my medical knowledge. Faith turned off the water, stared at her hands. That's not healing. That's torture. That's survival. Is it? Because it feels like I'm losing pieces of myself every day. The nurse who wouldn't harm, the woman who believed in do no harm. She's disappearing, and I don't know if I can get her back. Raina leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You want brutal honesty? From you? Always. You can't get her back. And worse, she's gone. She died the minute you fell in love with Lee Min-ho, and you need to stop mourning her and accept who you're becoming." The words hit like a diagnosis Faith didn't want to hear. And who am I becoming? Someone who survives, someone who protects what she loves at any cost, someone who understands that healing and harming aren't opposites, they're two sides of the same medical knowledge. Raina pushed off the doorframe. "You saved Yuri's life in a makeshift OR with minimal equipment. You defended a hospital full of civilians with syringes and threats. You neutralized a cartel boss without killing him when you easily could have. That's not a monster, Faith. That's a woman who's learned to adapt, or a woman who's becoming complicit in cycles of violence. Maybe both. Maybe that's the price of loving someone in this world." Faith dried her hands, looked at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that had gone 3 days without washing, scrubs that still smelled faintly of antiseptic and blood despite multiple cleanings. She looked exhausted, looked older, looked like someone who'd seen too much too fast. "Mrs. Lee said the same thing," Faith said quietly, "that love in this world costs everything. G. Wood would know. She's been paying that price for 45 years. Does it get easier? No. You just get stronger. Or you break." Raina studied Faith with an assessing gaze. "Question is, which one are you?" Before Faith could answer, her phone buzzed. Text from Lee. "We need to talk. My office. Now." The tone was wrong. Too formal, too distant. Dread coiled in Faith's stomach. Lee's private office was downtown, 23rd floor of a building his organization owned through shell companies. Faith had been there twice before, both times for strategy meetings, never alone. She found him standing at the window, back to the door, shoulders rigid. The energy in the room was heavy, oppressive. "What happened?" Faith asked. "I found them." Lee's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone he used when discussing business. "The cartel cell that's been targeting us, every member, every location, every contact. That's good news. So why do you sound like you're delivering a cancer diagnosis?" Lee turned. His face was a mask, the mafia boss fully present, the man she loved buried deep. "Because eliminating them requires doing something you won't be able to forgive." "What are you talking about? There are 37 people in this cell. Fighters, logistics, support staff. Some of them are combatants. They knew what they signed up for. Others are civilians, administrative workers, a family member who handles communications, a cousin who provides safe houses, a grandmother who cooks for the operation." Faith's stomach dropped. "You're talking about killing non-combatants? I'm talking about eliminating everyone who knows about us, about you, about my mother, my operations, our vulnerabilities." Lee's jaw tightened. "In this world, Faith, threats don't stop existing because you show mercy. They metastasize. They come back stronger. Miguel Reyes escaped because we tried to do this halfway. Next time, more people die. So your solution is to murder a grandmother? My solution is to protect what's mine, by any means necessary." They stared at each other across the office, the divide between them suddenly vast. Faith had known this moment would come, the line she couldn't cross, the choice that would define everything. "I can't support that," she said quietly. "I'm not asking for your support. I'm telling you what I have to do." "No, you're telling me you're going to commit mass murder and expecting me to stay silent. I'm telling you that I love you and that won't change, but I also won't let my people, won't let you keep living in fear because I was too weak to finish this." Lee's voice was steady, resolved. "You can walk away if you need to. I'll make sure you're protected, taken care of, but I won't apologize for doing what needs to be done." Faith felt the floor shift beneath her. This was it, the moment Mrs. Lee warned her about. The cost of loving a killer. Not the violence he'd already committed, but the violence he was willing to commit in her name. When? She asked. Tonight. Coordinated strikes at 2 a.m. Quick, efficient, over before dawn. You've already planned it? Already made the decision? Yes. Without consulting me, your equal partner? This isn't about partnership, Faith. This is about survival, and some decisions I have to make alone, because if I involve you, your hands get dirty too. I'm trying to protect you. By becoming a monster? I've always been a monster. You just chose to love me anyway. The truth of it hurt. Faith had walked into this relationship with her eyes open, seen the violence, understood the cost, but understanding in theory and facing it in practice were vastly different. I need time, she said. I don't have time to give. Then I need space. Lee nodded slowly. Go. But Faith, wherever you go, my people will be watching, protecting you, because even if you walk away, you're still mine, and I still won't let them touch you. Faith left without another word, walked out of the office, took the elevator down 23 floors, emerged onto Michigan Avenue, where normal people lived normal lives. The afternoon sun felt wrong, too bright, too casual for the darkness spreading inside her. She called Raina. I need a place to stay, somewhere Lee doesn't own. What happened? He's going to kill 37 people tonight, including non-combatants. I need to think. Come to my apartment. I'll leave the key under the mat. Raina's apartment was minimalist, ex-military in its efficiency. Faith sat on the couch, staring at nothing, replaying the conversation with Lee, trying to find the moment where she could have stopped this, trying to understand if she even should have. Her phone rang. Her mother. Faith almost didn't answer. Hadn't spoken to her family since the disowning 3 years ago when Faith had come out as bisexual and refused to apologize for her sinful weight. But something made her pick up. Mama? Faith. Her mother's voice was tight, scared. Baby, I don't know what you've gotten into, but some Korean men showed up at the house last week, said they were providing security, wouldn't say why, just that we needed to trust them. Faith closed her eyes. Lee, protecting her family without telling her, spending resources and manpower to keep safe the people who'd rejected her. Mama, it's complicated. Your brother thinks you're mixed up with criminals. I told him that's crazy, that my daughter is a nurse, saves lives. But Faith, are you in trouble? 3 years. 3 years of silence and judgment. And now her mother called not to apologize, but to demand answers. I'm in love, Faith said, with someone you'd hate, someone dangerous, and yes, that means I'm in trouble, but it also means I'm powerful, protected, alive in ways I never was when I was trying to be the daughter you wanted. Faith, you disowned me, Mama, told me I was going to hell for being fat and queer and refusing to apologize for existing. You don't get to call now and act concerned, but I'll tell you this, the man I love put security on your house even though you don't deserve it, because he knows I'd carry the guilt if something happened to you. That's who he is. That's what love looks like in my world. Silence on the line. Then, I was wrong about a lot of things. Your daddy and we've been talking, realized we lost our daughter over pride, over old ideas that don't matter anymore. We'd like a chance to, I can't do this right now. Faith's voice cracked. I'm dealing with things you couldn't understand. Questions about who I'm becoming, whether love is enough when the cost is innocent lives. What are you talking about? Nothing. Everything. I have to go. Faith, wait. She hung up, sat in the silence of Raina's apartment, her mother's voice echoing in her head. We lost our daughter over pride. Faith had thought she'd let that rejection go, moved on, built a new life, but hearing her mother's regret opened wounds she'd tried to cauterize with distance. Her phone buzzed again. Text from Lee. I won't do this if it costs you. Tell me to stop, and I will. Faith stared at the message, the power in her hands suddenly terrifying. She could stop this with one word: save 37 lives, including a grandmother who probably just wanted to feed her family. But if she did, Miguel Reyes would keep coming. The threat would continue. More people like Yuri would get hurt, more hospitals attacked, more civilians caught in crossfire. The math was impossible. 37 lives tonight versus dozens more later. Innocence on both sides of the equation. No clean answer. Faith thought about Mrs. Lee's advice. When the moment comes, remember this. Hesitation gets you killed. Guilt is a luxury for afterward. She typed, "I need to see it. If you're going to do this, I need to witness it, to understand fully who you are and what I'm choosing." Lee's response came immediately. "No, I won't let you see that. Equal partnership means equal responsibility. If I stay with you after this, I need to know exactly what I'm accepting." No illusions. No protection from reality. Long pause. Then, location will be sent at 1:30 a.m. Stay in the vehicle. Don't come inside no matter what you hear. Faith set down her phone. 7 hours until the operation. 7 hours to decide if love was enough to bridge this moral chasm. Reina returned at midnight with food neither of them ate and coffee neither wanted. "You're really going?" the Israeli asked. "I have to." "Why? You can walk away. Lee already gave you that option." "Because I need to know. If I'm going to be his partner, I can't hide from what that means. Can't love him in pieces. The gentle parts, the healing parts, and pretend the violence doesn't exist. Most people who say that don't actually want to know. They want the illusion of knowledge. I'm not most people." "No." Reina smiled sadly. "You're really not." The location was a warehouse outside Chicago. Faith arrived in Lee's SUV at 1:45 a.m., driven by one of his men who refused to make eye contact. The building was industrial, concrete and steel, isolated, perfect for what was about to happen. Lee met her at the vehicle. "You shouldn't be here." "But I am." "Faith, once you see this, you can't unsee it. I'm trying to give you deniability, protection." "I don't want protection. I want truth." She held his gaze. "Show me who you are when you think I'm not watching." Something broke in his expression. Pain and resignation and love all mixed together. "Stay here. It'll be over in 30 minutes. He walked away, entered the building with 15 of his people. The door closed behind them. Faith sat in the darkness, waiting, trying not to imagine what was happening inside. Then the shooting started, muffled by concrete walls but unmistakable. Rapid fire, professional, efficient. Faith counted rounds, estimated targets, cataloged the sounds like medical data, detaching her mind from her heart because if she thought too hard about what those sounds meant, 37 people dying, a grandmother whose last thought was probably confusion, logistics staff who'd taken a job for money and ended up caking bullets, she'd shatter. 23 minutes. Then silence. Lee emerged. Blood splattered across his face and suit. Hands steady, eyes dead. He got in the SUV, sat beside her, said nothing. Faith reached for his hand. It was warm, sticky. She held it anyway. "Was it quick?" she asked. "As quick as I could make it. No one suffered longer than they had to. The grandmother? First. She never knew what was happening." Faith nodded, processing, cataloging, trying to reconcile the man beside her who'd killed 37 people with clinical efficiency with the man who whispered her name in the dark and thanked her for healing his body. "Say something," Lee said quietly. "Yell, cry, tell me you're leaving." "I don't know what to say." "Then say nothing. Just let me know you're still here." Faith squeezed his blood-slicked hand. "I'm here." They drove in silence, back to the city, back to Lee's penthouse where he disappeared into the shower for 45 minutes while Faith sat on his bed, staring at nothing. When he emerged, clean, dressed in soft clothes, looking almost human again, he found her in the same position. "I don't know if I can do this. Long term." I don't know if I'm strong enough to love someone who does what you do. That's fair. But I don't know if I can walk away either, because without you, I go back to being small, safe, invisible, and I can't shrink myself back into that box, Minho. You broke me open, showed me I could be powerful. How do I give that up? You don't have to give it up. You just have to decide if the power is worth the price. Is it? Only you can answer that. Faith lay back on his bed, stared at the ceiling, felt him lie beside her, their bodies not touching, both processing the line that had been crossed. Tell me it won't always be like this. Tell me someday we can just exist without the violence. I can't promise that. This is who I am, what I do. Then tell me something true. I love you, more than I've loved anything in my entire life. And if you stay, I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice. But if you leave, I'll understand, and I'll still love you, from a distance, protecting you, however I can. Faith turned to face him, saw the truth in his eyes, the man and the monster, inseparable. I'm not leaving, but I need you to understand something. I witnessed tonight, chose not to walk away. That makes me complicit, accessories to murder, and I'll have to carry that. We both will.
I know, but Minho, there have to be limits, lines we don't cross. If we don't maintain some boundaries, we'll drown in this, become pure violence with no redemption. What limits? No more killing of true non-combatants unless there's absolutely no other option. The grandmother tonight, I understand why she had to die in your math, but that can't be our default. We find ways to neutralize threats that don't require mass casualties. Faith, I'm not naive. I know sometimes there's no clean option, but we try. We exhaust alternatives. We don't become the thing that threatens us. She sat up, looked at him fully. That's my line, my non-negotiable. Can you give me that? Lee considered. She could see him calculating, weighing, measuring what this concession would cost operationally. Finally, he nodded. I can try. I can't promise I'll always succeed, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They held each other through the dawn, not sleeping, not speaking, just existing in the aftermath of choices that couldn't be unmade. Faith's phone buzzed at 7 a.m., text from her mother. Your Korean friends are still outside. Thank you. And Faith, I'd like to try again, when you're ready. No judgment, just family. Faith showed Lee the message. My mother wants to reconcile. Because of me? Because she almost lost me and realized pride was stupid. Faith smiled slightly. Your protection made her see I wasn't the helpless daughter she remembered, that I had power, built a life, found love. Ironic, I killed 37 people last night and your mother thinks I'm a good influence. The world is complicated. Yes, it is. Faith deleted the message, wasn't ready for family reconciliation when she'd just watched her boyfriend commit mass murder. Some bridges required more time, but she stayed, chose Lee, chose power, chose the transformation that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The cost was her innocence. The price was her soul. The reward was becoming someone she'd never imagined possible. And Faith Lewis, RN, trauma nurse, healer of broken men and accessory to mass murder, had to decide if that trade was worth it. She looked at Lee, broken and whole, killer and lover, monster and man. I'm all in, she said, but we're going to do this differently from now on. Find ways to win that don't destroy us both. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. She kissed him, tasted coffee and regret. Together, because that's what partners do. Even when one partner is a killer, especially then, because killers need someone to remind them they're still human. Outside, Chicago woke to another day. 37 fewer people breathing its air, dozens more sleeping safely in their beds because of it. The math Faith would have to carry forever, but she carried it, because love in this world wasn't clean or simple. It was complicated and costly, and sometimes required looking directly at darkness without flinching. Faith had flinched once, wouldn't again. That was her gift to Lee, her curse to herself. The price of loving a killer was becoming one too, not in action, but in acceptance. And Faith had finally stopped pretending otherwise. 3 weeks after the warehouse, Faith opened the doors to the Morrison Street Medical Network. 40 beds transformed into 60, 3 nurse practitioners hired, community outreach programs funded, and a foundation that made everything look legitimate enough to survive scrutiny. Lee had created the framework. Faith had filled it with purpose. Together, they'd built something that served 2 worlds: his people who needed medical care without questions, and civilians who needed health care without judgment. The grand opening was on a Tuesday. Press showed up because major foundations loved feel-good stories about troubled neighborhoods getting resources. Faith stood at the microphone in her best suit, smiling for cameras, pretending her funding hadn't been laundered through 17 shell companies. Health care is a right, not a privilege, she told the reporters. Everyone who walks through these doors will be treated with dignity regardless of their circumstances, their background, or their ability to pay. It was true, also calculated. The more public she became, the harder she was to eliminate quietly. Visibility is armor, her own strategy brought to life. Mrs. Lee sat in the front row beaming. Raina stood near the exit, scanning for threats. Yuri, still recovering but mobile, watched from the doorway. Lee stayed away, too visible, too recognized. But he texted during her speech, "I'm proud of you." 3 words that meant more than any applause. The threat came 2 weeks later. Faith was training Lee's people in combat medicine, teaching them to treat gunshot wounds, manage traumatic bleeding, perform emergency field procedures. 20 soldiers sitting in the Morrison Street classroom learning to save lives they might have to take later. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number.
You think going public makes you safe? It just makes you famous. Famous people have famous funerals. M.R. Reyes. The cartel boss had been silent since his escape. Not gone, silent, plotting, waiting. Faith showed Lee the message. He's coming back. Let him come. We're ready this time. Are we? He's been planning for weeks while we've been building clinics and playing community heroes. He's 3 steps ahead. Then we get 5 steps ahead. Lee studied the message. He wants to make a spectacle of you. Public execution, message to everyone who crosses the cartel. So we make him work for it, draw him out. Faith, I'm not hiding Minho, not anymore. He wants me, he can try to take me, but this time I'm not prey, I'm the hunter. Raina, listening from the doorway, smiled. Finally, the student becomes the warrior. They planned for 72 hours. Intelligence gathering, pattern analysis, predictive modeling. Miguel Reyes had weaknesses like anyone else. Faith intended to find them all. She discovered the key information through her medical network. A nurse at County Hospital mentioned treating a man with distinctive tattoos, cartel markers, for type 1 diabetes complications. Required regular insulin, careful management, consistent monitoring. Miguel Reyes wasn't invincible. He was diabetic. Faith pulled hospital records through contacts she'd cultivated, saw the admission patterns. Miguel got his insulin from one pharmacy, picked it up himself, too paranoid to trust anyone with medication that kept him alive. He has to go there, Faith explained to Lee and Yuri. Every 3 weeks. It's a vulnerability we can exploit. You want to ambush him at a pharmacy? Yuri asked. I want to ambush his medication, replace his insulin with something similar but wrong, trigger a diabetic crisis, force him to seek medical help at a hospital where we'll be waiting. Lee stared at her. You want to medically assassinate him. I want to neutralize him using knowledge he can't fight against. He expects bullets and violence, won't expect his own body betraying him. That's brilliant, Raina said. Also terrifying. You've weaponized healthcare. I weaponized understanding. There's a difference.
The plan was set for the following Tuesday, Miguel's medication pickup day. Faith accessed the pharmacy system through a sympathetic pharmacy tech who owed her favors, switched Miguel's insulin prescription with rapid-acting insulin that would cause hypoglycemic episodes if dosed normally. Miguel picked up his medication, never knowing it was wrong. Within 24 hours, he'd start experiencing symptoms. Within 48, he'd need emergency care. Faith worked a shift at County Hospital's ER on Thursday night, waiting, watching, ready. Miguel Reyes arrived at 11:47 p.m., supported by two of his men, disoriented, sweating, classic signs of hypoglycemia. Faith took the case, professional, calm, the nurse doing her job. "Sir, you're experiencing a diabetic episode. I need to check your blood sugar." She pricked his finger, read the glucometer. "Dangerously low. When did you last take insulin?" "This morning," Miguel slurred. His eyes widened with recognition. "You." "Me?" Faith smiled. "Small world. Let's get you stabilized." She administered dextrose, enough to bring his blood sugar up, but not enough to fully resolve the crisis, enough to keep him dependent on medical care, enough to keep him vulnerable. "What did you do?" Miguel whispered. "I'm helping you. That's what nurses do." Faith adjusted his IV. "Though I should mention your insulin might be contaminated. You'll need new prescriptions, different pharmacy. Can't trust the old one." Understanding dawned in his eyes. She'd poisoned him without poisoning him, used his own medication against him. Medical warfare at its finest. Lee's people moved in before Miguel could call for backup, quietly extracted him from the ER under the guise of transferring to another facility. By the time Miguel's men realized something was wrong, their boss was gone. They took him to the same warehouse where Lee had conducted the operation Faith witnessed, poetic symmetry. But this time was different. This time Faith didn't watch from a vehicle. She walked inside, medical bag in hand. Miguel was tied to a chair, still disoriented from hypoglycemia. Lee stood beside him, weapon drawn but not aimed, waiting for Faith. "You wanted to talk," Faith said, approaching Miguel, "so talk." "You're a demon, worse than him. At least he's honest about being a killer." "I'm a nurse. I heal people, but I also understand bodies better than anyone you'll ever meet. Know exactly how to break them, how to fix them, how to use that knowledge for protection." Faith knelt in front of him. "Your brother came into my clinic torturing someone. You came after me, my patients, the man I love. You made me a target. Now you're paying the price. So kill me. Make your boyfriend do his work." "I'm not going to kill you." Faith pulled a syringe from her bag.
"I'm going to offer you a choice. This is insulin. Real insulin. Proper dosage. Take it and you'll stabilize. Live. But you'll also sign a peace treaty. Leave Chicago. Leave us alone. Dismantle your operations here and never return. And if I refuse, then I walk away. Let the hypoglycemia continue. You'll slip into diabetic ketoacidosis, then a coma, then death. Slow, painful, no bullets, no violence, just your own body failing because you didn't get the medicine you needed." Miguel laughed, bitter and broken. "You're more ruthless than any killer I've met. I'm a survivor, and I protect what's mine." Faith held up the syringe. "Choose." Silence filled the warehouse. Miguel looked at Lee. "You found yourself a monster." "I found myself an equal," Lee corrected. Miguel chose life, signed the treaty. Faith administered the insulin, monitored his recovery, ensured he was stable, professional to the end. His people extracted him within the hour, moving operations to Detroit, ceding Chicago territory. The war was over, not with bullets, but with biology. 6 weeks later, Faith stood on the clinic roof with Lee, watching sunset paint the Chicago skyline. The city looked peaceful from up here. Deceptive. "Yuri's back to full duty," Lee said. "Doctors are calling his recovery miraculous. You saved his life." "We saved his life. I did the surgery. You got him to me fast enough. Always we, never you alone." That's partnership. They'd settled into a rhythm over the past weeks, Faith managing the medical network, Lee managing his organization, both collaborating where their worlds intersected. It wasn't clean, wasn't simple, but it worked.
I got a call from my mother today, Faith said. Asked if she could visit, meet you, apologize properly for the years of judgment. What did you say? I said yes, but I also said she needed to understand something. I'm not her little girl anymore. I'm a woman who made hard choices, crossed lines, became someone she wouldn't recognize. If she wants to be part of my life, she has to accept all of it. And if she can't, then she chose wrong twice. Faith leaned against the railing. But I think she will. The near-death experience from your protection scared her straight, made her realize life's too short for pride. When's she coming? Next month, giving me time to prepare the "my boyfriend runs the Korean Mafia" conversation. Faith smiled. Should be entertaining. Lee laughed, genuine and warm. The sounds still surprised her. The broken man who'd walked into her ER 6 months ago barely smiled. Now he laughed, touched her freely, slept through the night without nightmares. The physical therapy had healed his body. Love had healed something deeper. I have something for you, Lee said, pulling out a small box. Faith's stomach dropped. Min-ho, if that's a ring, it's not. He opened the box. Inside, a key identical to the one he'd given her before, but gold instead of steel. This is the key to the foundation, the medical network, everything we've built. It's yours, legally yours. If something happens to me, it all transfers to you. Clean, legitimate. Why would something happen to you? Because I'm in a dangerous business, because someday my luck might run out, because I need to know that if I'm gone, the good we've done continues. He pressed the key into her hand. You built this, Faith. It should be yours. She looked at the key, at the weight of responsibility it represented. You trust me with everything? You've earned it. Saved my life, protected my mother, neutralized our enemies, built something meaningful from blood money. Lee's voice was soft. You're not just my partner. You're my equal in every way. Faith kissed him, tasted coffee and promises. I love you, the killer and the man, the monster and the human, all of it. Even after watching what you did in that warehouse? Especially after, because I understand now. The violence isn't who you are. It's what you do to protect what you love. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, because you offered Miguel a choice. Could have killed him. Should have, according to your world's logic. But you let me try something different. Respected my limits. That matters. They stood together as night fell, the city lights flickering to life below. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People were healing, the eternal cycle continuing regardless of their choices. What's next? Asked Faith. Next, we keep building, keep protecting, keep finding ways to do this differently. Lee pulled her closer. We train more of my people in combat medicine. You establish satellite clinics in other neighborhoods. We create systems where healing and harm don't have to be opposites. Ambitious. I made you ambitious. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. Now I'm building a future. We're building a future. Yes, we. The final confrontation came on a Wednesday night, 3 months after Miguel's departure. Faith was closing the clinic late, finishing charts, checking on overnight patients, when she felt the presence behind her. Training from Reina kicked in. She grabbed the scalpel from her pocket, spun. Miguel Reyes stood in the doorway, alone. Unarmed, hands raised. I'm not here to fight, he said immediately. Then why are you here? You signed a treaty. I came to thank you. Faith lowered the scalpel slightly. Explain. You could have killed me. Should have. Instead, you gave me a choice. Made me realize I'd been using my brother's death as an excuse for violence that had nothing to do with justice. Miguel's voice was rough. I went back to Mexico, talked to his widow, found out he'd been abusive, cruel. The rival gang he was torturing had stopped him from hurting someone weaker. My brother was the villain, not the victim. And now I'm rebuilding legitimate businesses, using cartel connections for protection, not expansion. It's slow, messy, but it's honest. He looked at her directly. You showed me there's a difference between power and violence, that strength can be about creation, not destruction. I needed to thank you for that. Faith studied him. saw truth in his eyes, also saw the danger that would always live there. You didn't leave cartel life completely, just redirected it. If you're lying, she said quietly, if this is reconnaissance or revenge, it's not. You have my word, for whatever that's worth. Miguel started to leave, then paused. You're good for him, Lee Min-ho. I've been watching from a distance. He's different now, less brutal, more strategic. That's your influence. Or maybe he was always capable of being more and just needed permission. Maybe. Either way, you built something here. Don't let this world destroy it. Don't let him destroy it, and don't let yourself be destroyed by becoming too much like him. Then Miguel was gone, disappearing into Chicago's night like he'd never been there. Faith stood alone in the clinic, processing. The enemy had become, what? Not a friend, but not an enemy anymore either. Just another person navigating impossible choices in a complicated world. She called Lee. He answered immediately. You okay? My people said Miguel was at the clinic. I'm fine. He came to talk, make peace. And I think he meant it, but keep surveillance on him anyway. Trust, but verify. Already done. Come home? Home was Lee's penthouse now. Had been for 2 months. Her things mixed with his. Her medical journals next to his business documents. Her scrubs in his closet. Domestic bliss built on a foundation of violence and compromise. I'll be there in an hour. Need to finish charts. I'll wait up. The final scene came on a Friday night, 6 months after everything began. Faith was working the ER at Northwestern Memorial, her 2 shifts per week that kept her license active and reminded her who she'd been before Lee Min-ho. The doors burst open. Gunshot victim, multiple wounds. Lee's men carrying someone from their organization. Faith's heart stopped. Then Lee walked in, unhurt, just there to ensure his person got care. Their eyes met across the ER, the same ER where it all started, where she first seen his broken body and decided to fix it, where she'd crossed every line she had and discovered lines she didn't know existed. Let me take a look, Faith said. Lee smiled, the code phrase that had started everything. Now it meant something different, not just physical healing, but partnership, trust, love that had survived fire and blood and moral complexity. Faith treated the patient, professional, efficient, competent, saved another life, added another name to the list of people who walked away because she refused to let them die. After, in the quiet moments before dawn, Lee found her in the staff break room. You saved another one, he said. That's what I do. Even when they're my people, even when you know what they do for me, especially then, because if I stop seeing them as people, I become what we're fighting against. Faith turned to face him. I made a choice 6 months ago, to heal you, to love you, to become part of your world, but I made it on my terms. I don't have to become a killer to be your partner. I can stay a healer and still protect what's ours. I know, that's what I love about you. The stubbornness, the integrity. You bend but don't break. Change but don't lose yourself. He pulled her into his arms. You made me believe I could be more than what I was. You were always more. You just needed permission to see it. They stood together in the fluorescent break room light. Not perfect, not clean, but real. Partners in every sense. Building something new from old violence. Outside, Chicago woke to another day. The Morrison Street Medical Network served its 100th patient. Mrs. Lee taught Faith to make kimchi. Yuri returned to full duty with a scar he showed off proudly. Raina trained more of Lee's people in tactical medicine. Faith's mother visited, met Lee, and surprised everyone by liking him. Miguel Reyes kept his word in Detroit. The world kept turning. Violence continued. But so did healing. Faith Lewis, RN, had learned that love in impossible circumstances wasn't about choosing between light and dark. It was about existing in the gray space between, finding ways to protect what mattered without destroying yourself in the process. She'd crossed lines, made compromises, witnessed horrors, committed acts that kept her awake some nights.
But she'd also saved lives, built hope, created change, loved fiercely. The story didn't end with happily ever after because that wasn't realistic. It ended with, "We'll figure it out together," because that was honest. Faith looked at Lee, killer and lover, monster and man, partner in everything, and knew she'd choose him again, every time, despite the cost, because of the cost.